Kenny, man, we missed our friend Ken Sinclair in October, but we got him right now. For our listeners who might have been under a rock for the last 2 decades, tell them about our next guest and why we should be listening to him, huh?
2 decades, it might be more like 5. We have one of the most venerated people in the HVAC and building automation industry. We have the owner, editor, and publisher of AutomatedBuildings.com, the one and only Ken Sinclair. Ken, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much, guys.
Hey, man, we missed you last month. Did you miss us?
I did. I suspect you were just busy. I thought you'd forgot me, and I thought I was old news.
No, in no way you're old news, Ken Sinclair. As a matter of fact, I tell you what, Kenny and I, we sort of did the road circuit last month. We covered the Johnson Controls Conference. From there, we flew to Chicago, and we did the KMC meeting and the Siemens meeting, and then after that, I had to go to marriage counseling because I've been spending so much time on the road with the 2 small kids. But that all got worked out, buddy. But we missed October, so I know we got the November issue ready to hit the streets. So if you could, real quick, give us sort of an update on some of the highlights from the October issue.
Okay, well, our theme was when evolution turns to revolution, and it just fed on the edge devices. Smart edge devices, self-learning that we'd started the month before. And it was well received, actually, probably some of us, our highest daily reads ever. And the articles were all well received. It's interesting, we usually get a couple of articles that, do really well. But there was probably 4 or 5 that were very, very close. A lot of interest in what was going on there, so we were really pleased with that issue.
Well, hey, hang on real quick. Let's back up for a sec, because I tell you what, I think as usual, not only are you usually way ahead of everybody else with what's going on, but you're also right on time, because just this month, as you know, Kenny and I both work in the business, so we're both out selling jobs, and you sort of have our ear to the pavement, if you will. And I tell you what, the savvy integrators, Ken, are really starting to figure out that they can maybe eliminate the need for servers and JACEs and stuff like that, and actually use the haystack, like the haystack data pump and Alpert's pump, the edge devices, as a way to save money on a job and maybe even transport information maybe even a little bit more efficiently. They're not having to push it up to the cloud. They're able to keep it local when they need to. So is that part of the revolution you're talking about? I mean, are we going to see the way we do control systems change a lot because of the advent of these edge devices?
Yes, I really believe that is true. The other thing is, when I started this, 3 months ago, I thought I was, way out there, and I was pretty sure it was going to happen. But I got to admit, I'm as amazed as anybody with the amount of articles that are coming across my desk, the amount of actual products that are being built, the whole global effect. Actually, some of this is coming at us from Europe. I just got an article from Iceland, of all places. So we're starting to get the globalness of the edge, which of course I couldn't see from where I originally was. But once I started talking about it, people joined in the conversation. So yeah, it's been really, I too was surprised. I was leading the revolution, but I was surprised at the amount of people that are involved.
I just got a question, Ken. When we see so much this new IoT changing and self-machine learning and all these great things, I always like to come back and ask the question, with our HVAC and building management, where do we sit as an industry? Even though we know it's coming, are we ready for this explosive and disruptive evolution, or are we going to get hit broadside?
Yeah,
Meaning that the traditional approach is going to be dismissed.
Yeah, I sometimes feel a little bit about like the messenger who's going to get shot, because I've been scolded by several people in the traditional industry that I'm just causing confusion by introducing all of this stuff, because some of it isn't quite real yet, which is actually true. But by God, you better be aware that this change is happening, because it really is happening. And so we really need to talk about it. I was actually pleasantly surprised to find that the industry is not likely to get blindsided by it. They're in their back rooms. They're talking about it. These ideas are festering. Raspberries and beagle boards and things are becoming common talk. We've got an article this month on with Siemens basically taking one of their hardware devices and basically allowing you to attach a Raspberry or Arduino boards to it, and it explains how they're marrying the maker culture to our traditional culture. It kind of turns out that one of the biggest advantages we have is we have what I'll call hardened I/O. Basically, we've been supplying these boards for 30 years now, and the boards, we've figured out what makes an input-output go on and off without the computer telling it to, which is maybe electrical interference, vibration, all kinds of things like that. So we actually understand that industry really well, whereas the hobbyists are, the stuff they're making just isn't suitable to mount inside of a control panel. So it's interesting to see that what's happening is we're starting to see hybrid products that basically look like what I would say the bottom of the old control panels, but the top, which used to be some kind of PC-based microprocessor, is completely disappearing, and in its place is a new brain transplant, which is either a Raspberry, a Beagle board, or an Arduino type controller, or a Sedona framework. So we're starting to see a rapid evolution there of the new stuff falling on top of the old stuff, but we certainly still have a play because we know how to connect to some of that existing I/O.
Well, understood. And to kind of wrap up the October edition, you had some other great articles. You had The Digital Transformation by Mark Peacock, The Creators and Makers of New Controllers, Clayton Plymil and George Young, Cybersecurity with Ping Yao from CEO of Optical. So as you transition from these great inputs of October, what do we look forward to in the November theme? Open Edge software fuels self-learning operability. How's that transition from October to November?
It worked out great. So what we kind of found is that that these new devices, once you get into the new devices and you try and get your head around a little bit how these makers and creators think and how they think so differently than us, they are used to grabbing big pieces of open software to get started. The first thing they grab is an operating system, and they just simply download this from GitHub and put it on top of a Raspberry Pi, and now they're started. And then they start loading down other pieces. So it's more like making a pie than it is writing software from the past. They're looking for pieces. So what became obvious is, as we kind of, this is all an evolutionary process for me too, is just to try and understand what is going on here. So following these pieces, the software just becomes, open software becomes how it actually works, how they are able to build these things so quickly and add so many features to them. So it actually starts off, our lead article is from Alper and Therese, and I love it. It's called the data exhaust is tomorrow's machine learning. And what it's talking about is basically having this data on the edge, and you're not really sure what you're going to do with it. but by God, you better make it in some kind of open format and have open software tools that you can pull it off, because likely that's going to be the feedstock for self-learning. Not likely, that is going to be the feedstock for self-learning. And then another article we have.
Well, hang on, Ken, real quick, Eric. Let me chime in real quick on that. So when you think about our audience, we've got manufacturers, we've got integrators, we've got owners, we've got consulting engineers. How it seems like the person that's really going to affect is the manufacturer more so than anybody else. Is it going to affect the integrators at all? Excuse me. The users are obviously going to benefit from this, but how do you see that sort of going from a concept, which I think you're right on with, to the reality of how we're going to deal with this, and your audience and our audience is going to deal with this in their day-to-day life?
Well, I think what's evolving is that we will all have our own tools looking at the data. The data is free. Just let me see if I can get a quote from this. Maybe it's going to go. There it is. It's basically, how do they say it here? It's basically free. Take back your building. Here we go. I want to quote this one. This is from Alper and Teresa's article. Take back your building is how the open protocol building automation community has framed its alternative to protocol locked in by big OEMs. There's a big concern that the large vendors, OEMs, will actually try to use the software to again lock folks in and basically come up with proprietary protocols in the clouds. And there's another position from a bunch of other folks to basically keep this open and let's use IoT standards in the clouds. So therefore, there's this struggle going on. Back to your original question, how is this going to play with the consultants? I know SES is looking at developing a lot of their own tools. They're working with PNE or PNNL up here in Washington State. They've got some actual software platforms that they've been developing and working with DOE. So that's interesting that they're getting involved in this area as well. So there's a whole movement when you start looking at it. The millenniums, they want this data free. They just want it, and they want to slice and dice it the way they want to slice and dice it. And they go away and they get big pieces of open software to draw graphs of it, to analyze it, to turn it into machine learning. It's kind of a different way of looking at all of this.
Well, hang on. Speaking of a different way of looking at it, Ken, sorry to interrupt, but because look, we've talked in the past about the concept of the building whisperer. Paul Oswald from ESI talks about, the tribal knowledge leaving the building. I just got a straight up question for you, because I tell you what, with your knowledge, for example, and I realize you haven't been in the field in a while, but you take a guy like you that's got 30 years or whatever, tuning a building, getting a building set, how much more are you going to squeeze out of a building with all this data stuff? I mean, is there a place where you get a law of diminishing returns with this? I mean, is this a whole lot to do about nothing? Are we going to get to the end of the day, have all this data access, and really realize that all we really need to do is get a guy like Ken Sinclair, give him some tools and let him tweak our building? Or is there going to be a huge reward from this?
I think one of the problems is the Ken Sinclairs of life are basically walking away or decaying or falling down in the fields in the troops, and are no longer available to actually write the necessary algorithms or the necessary programming to make this stuff happening. It's becoming more and more of a problem for large system integrators to get talented people and to scale that. And what's happening is they just simply cannot scale, like a variable volume dual duct system. If they get something that is particularly, rather than a standard VAV, it takes a lot of head scratching, and it also takes a lot of looking at trends and basically trying to optimize this. So the whole concept of moving this to a self-learning environment, I think, is the fact that the self-learning environment will probably provide more consistency and be more scalable than having someone write individual programs. The other problem you have is when, and this was even a problem in my day too, is basically the programs that were written reflected the personality of the person writing them, and some of them were amazing and some of them were amazingly bad. So I think that we can add some consistency, and probably the biggest thing is the speed at which we can actually get some of this stuff under reasonable control. And the self-learning stuff, what we've seen from it already is pretty amazing. And another interesting thing is, I know Brad has been working with EchoRhythm, and they've been doing some projects up here and using some of their self-learning software. And once he saw what they were self-learning, he saw a whole bunch of other opportunities that they hadn't seen, which is, I think that's a big advantage, is once we get this stuff more visible to more folks, people looking at it from a mathematical point of view, people looking at it from an analytics, people looking at it from a time period, there's a whole bunch of advantages to make that go.
Well, that's really good stuff, Ken. EcoRhythm always did fascinate me, in how that logarithm could be put to use, whether it was to diagnose the aircraft engines, or the gentleman, Dr. Igor,
Messick.
What's his last name?
Messick.
He said that they could even use that to monitor and diagnose the human heart. So fascinating stuff. Ken, to shift gears a little bit, because that's heavy duty. We gotta bring this back down on planet Earth. I just love to talk about this stuff. But you were talking about something really fascinating.
Hey man, I'm in the clouds now. I don't have to deal with Earth.
Well, again, it's fascinating, and I think it's happening. Like you said, there's so much going on behind the lines. Behind the curtains, where there's just massively heavy lifting going on, and number crunching and logarithms. And by the time they fine tune that and bring it out into the markets, it'll all be done. It'll all be scalable, like you said. I'd see. Because we have different entries. Some of the posts that Eric and I have later on in the show here discuss Intel's involvement, and what they're not kidding around anymore. They rolled their sleeves up and went to work from a different perspective, and then it's all coming into we're in the centerpiece. And again, the HVAC and building automation is just a spoke of that big wheel. So, but you had mentioned earlier about Wi-Fi, Bluetooth LED lighting, and the fascinating future of lighting, LED lighting. How is that going to impact? And that just follows in parallel. Just hard to believe, but yet it's coming as fast as sure as winter, fall is fall. We're going to see this amazing technology deployed through LED lighting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Great. Okay. Actually, first, I love your reference to Bluetooth, because actually that's what it should be, because it's going to be so much of it out there. There's definitely going to be more than one Bluetooth. It's using the team. Actually, we've got a great article from Trevor Palmer, and we're talking about basically the combining of two domains, the LED lighting domain and the DDC HVAC. And of course, what's going to happen with them is they have to change their whole voltage system, because traditionally lighting was supplied with high voltage, and of course LED is 24 volts DC. And we've talked about the DC ceiling, and that's kind of evolving not so much to the T-bar, but more into actual DC networks or power over Ethernet. There's a struggle going on there. But What is likely to happen is that it looks like Wi-Fi is going to prevail, and what will happen is every light fixture will become a self-learning edge device with lots of memory. So the light will basically, one concept would be is you would take all these lights, you basically do your ceiling tile system, you go out, you plop in these new LED lights with Wi-Fi devices on top of them, you power them up, you take out your phone, you find all of these fixtures, you basically organize them into lighting zones. You, because they have Bluetooth, they know the amount of cell phones that are underneath them. They basically do occupancy sensing. They do where the people are located. They can reach out to the internet and bring back information such as daylighting information. So this whole network starts to get a whole lot more powerful. And if it wants to reach out and grab some information from a thermostat, that likely will be done wirelessly as well. One of the advantages they have is their system has, by definition, a power supply because it needs a power supply to turn on the LED light. So therefore, their electronic devices don't have to worry about batteries or in-ocean or energy harvesting and stuff. They are on the new 24-volt grid, which of course doesn't really exist in most buildings. So that's some of the changes that are coming. Actually, I convinced Trevor to come and speak at the Connection Community Collaboratory in Vegas because of his transition, and I think he's particularly well versed to speak on that because, of course, of his. He was involved with, of course, Viconics in the early days, Sante, and of course then Distech, and then now he's just crossed the floor from Distech over to Acuity, and is basically working on their software development. So I think he's got his head right into some of this stuff. So this is what I mentioned is there's a lot of upstart companies that are doing some pretty neat stuff. And as I start poking around in this open software and some of the stuff we did in the last months, we've opened dialogue with a whole bunch of people that we traditionally haven't talked to that are actually working out there.
Well, Ken, I got to hop in because you are saying so much that I don't want this to get lost in all the brilliance that's coming out of Canada right now. So a couple of things real quick. As you know, with the Control Trends Awards, we have the Innovative Product of the Year. We have all this new technology. You and your community really, really have your finger on that pulse. As you know, the nomination ballots are out. So I would encourage your community and some of these people and you as well, there's a place you can write other in. That's how we find out who these new companies are and get them involved with the Control Trends Awards. So I'd encourage you and your community to, as these new and innovative technologies come out, there's several categories they'd fit in, Innovative Product of the Year being one of them. So that's piece one. Piece two, Ken, I don't want to gloss over this because one of the highlights of AHR to me, and I think most people, is your collaboratorium. For our community who might have forgotten or might not know, tell them about the collaboratorium and when it is so that they can make plans to attend it at AHR.
Okay, it's on Tuesday at 1:30, and I believe that is January 31st.
Yep. Should be over your hangover from the Control Trends Awards by then.
Yeah, that's right, because that's Tuesday, because you're Sunday night, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, correct. So okay, so we've got a couple of sessions on Monday. Actually, we've got a brand new session. We've got the I've been talking to our Hall of Fame winner, George Thomas over at Contemporary Controls, and George and I have been having a lot of fun pushing back and forth all of this Raspberry bits and Beagle bits and stuff, and this is all of great interest to us us old guys, and we're just amazed at how fast this stuff is falling on us. And of course, George, for the last few years, has been working with bringing Sedona, the Sedona Alliance together, where he's using the Sedona chip, and they basically have an open editor, so you can actually load the Sedona software, which kind of looks like a mini Jace, into a Raspberry Pi and a Beagle board, and of course into their own controllers. And I think also that's what Alper uses, and of course EasyIO as well. So we are, and there's another company, escapes me for a moment, in Europe that's using it as well. So we're starting to see open software that you actually can load up your whole operating system into these devices, and for us old guys, this is like totally amazing to try and get our minds around. But anyway, so what we're doing is we're actually going to have a session 10:30 on Monday at AHR, and we're going to have George is bringing some of his people. John Petsy's going to speak to as one of the folks that was involved in originally Tritium, when Tritium basically put the license on the Sedona framework. So we're going to explain how you would actually load this software up into some of these innovative devices, and how it will work with several other devices. So we basically have got a whole control system, operating system, that we can actually load up as open source.
Well, you know what they say, Ken? You say you want a revolution. Well, you know. Ken, man, you are just disruptive today. I tell you what's that going to do to all the controls vendors when you show them how to use Raspberry Pis? But I think it just goes to show, as a teacher of mine once said, nothing's obvious to the uninformed. But if you want to be informed and learn all the cool stuff, you got to hang out with Ken Sinclair. The November issue is out, automatedbuildings.com, or will be out by the time this airs. And check out the October issue. Ken, I hate to do this, buddy, but we're going to have to hop off. But as usual, fantastic stuff. Make sure to plan. If you're coming to AHR, you got two things you got to do. You got to go to the Control Trends Awards, and then you got to go to Ken Symposiums, man. I tell you what, I'm going to dump all my inventory, buy a bunch of Raspberry Pis, and have you and George Thomas show me new. Who said old dogs didn't know new tricks, huh?
Yeah, that's right. But actually, just to play on your word disruptive, that's something we have to watch. Is so here I am at the point of disrupting a good portion of my readers, because what I'm talking about is very disruptive to them, and that's one problem. The other one, we floated into a meeting, and all of a sudden I decided what I was talking about just about killed everybody in the room. So it's an interesting time for sure.
All right, buddy. There you go. Our man, Ken Sinclair from Canada. Thanks so much, Ken. Appreciate it. Check his issue out, automatedbuildings.com.
Thanks, Ken.